Follow me here, Chad. Jacob, right before we get going here, put us up. Chad, a minute to go. Please show everyone your preparations.
That's how you clear your throat, getting ready for a show. I'm all good now. All right, let's do this. Okay, back up.
OutKick 360 is back alongside Chad Withrow and Paul Kuharski. I'm Jonathan Hutton, Lance Lee, Jakob Swanson, David Reed, Emma Notstein, making the show happen for us. Glad you're with us as we kick off the week. And a lot to get to with all the headlines today. We'll hit the Tennessee Power Hour coming up at 1 o'clock Eastern, noon Central. But we kick things off by saying, please like, subscribe, rate, and reply to any of the ways you're watching the show right now.
Retweet. Yeah,
retweet on Twitter and subscribe on YouTube. We appreciate that. We'll be monitoring the chats. You can also hit us up on Twitter at OutKick360. That is how you can interact with the show live. What a Final Four, but in particular, what a classic matchup we will never forget between Gonzaga and UCLA. That is where we start today's show. Guys, as that game ended in overtime, I'm thinking, we just watched a game that, Claire and I, that we will never forget. We will always reference this game with the rest from here on out.
It's sometimes recency bias, sometimes hyperbole to say what we just saw was the best thing we've ever seen. I don't think it's either of those when you talk about this game. It may be the best college basketball game that we've ever seen. It was that good. And what I loved about it was that there wasn't this Chris Webber timeout type moment at any point. Everyone stepped up and made plays. Everyone played great. When it was the most pressure-packed moments, guys on both teams stepped up. It sounds silly and cliche to say there are no losers in that game. There really aren't any losers. That's one where you embrace after a game like that and know that you were a part of history, that everyone that watched that appreciates both teams equally in that moment for giving absolutely everything. And to see that many guys step up and make plays, it was phenomenal.
Yeah, like you're saying, there's no mistake really that was a key to the game. I mean, UCLA going to the basket, getting blocked, it's a phenomenal block. Right, so there's no error. A guy UCLA, who was it? The point guard misses a layup.
Johnny Juzang.
Or no, it's Juzang misses the layup. He gets a follow and puts it back in to tie it. Both teams played at such a high level. UCLA played, a Villanova versus Georgetown quality game to be in position to pull the upset before Suggs' fantastic bank shot. I think not just that as a highlight for the ages, but Suggs' block that I just mentioned with the subsequent rebound, the almost full court bounce pass to Timmy, and Timmy's subsequent, did he dunk it or lay it in?
Oh, he dunked it.
Just a phenomenal,
he piked it.
A phenomenal basketball play. And, I'd hesitate to call it the greatest game of all time, but it's one of the greatest. That Duke-Kentucky game.
So let's compare.
It's there.
Let's compare the two.
Those two.
Because Duke-Kentucky, and we're going to have some audio for you comparing the two with people that lived it a little bit later, but a buddy of mine pointed this out, and it's a good point. The one difference between the two games, and that puts Duke, Kentucky over the top for him, was the crowd reaction in the Spectrum in Philadelphia. Packed house.
Part of it, yeah.
It was going nuts the whole game. And I remember watching that game as a kid and laying on my parents' floor looking up at the old TV set, watching that whole game and remembering it well. But it was the reaction of the crowd that had so much to do with it, but would agree that the game on the court was better, start to finish, between Gonzaga and UCLA than that classic Duke-Kentucky game. But just going back to the everyone making plays, the Jalen Suggs, the block, coming back inbounds, people were also asking, isn't that out of bounds if you're the first person to touch it when you come back inbounds? It changed this year. That rule did. If it's a basketball play that takes you out of bounds, as long as you reestablish both feet inbounds and touch it, then you're fine. Remarkable play by him. Just great play all around.
While we're talking about remarkable plays, Timmy stepping up to take the charge with
phenomenal.
4 fouls in that moment.
Bold.
But also the officials. The officials got that call right.
The officials, I thought, were great. Like, the big part of this game, zero controversy. That was an absolute charge. It was absolutely the right call.
Yeah.
I was worried they were going to screw it up. I knew when he stepped up, immediately I said, that's a charge. And I'm thinking, if they call a block here and they win this game on free throws with, 1.8, I think was the time left at that point, it would have been a terrible way to end that game. Right call by the officials. Timmy is like a funny Christian Laettner, is the best way to describe him. You know that the opposing teams hate him and his antics. But it's funny. The mustache celebration, everything. What a player to watch.
Yeah, but if he played for Duke or Kentucky, he would be hated nationally.
Hated.
No, he's got the benefit of playing for a program like Gonzaga.
But you know what I mean? Like, Laettner, there's a difference in the personalities, too. Like, he's got more of a funny, like look at me, mustache, flexing thing, a very self-aware type deal. Laettner was just dirty. I mean, he had a smirk on his face. He would talk trash.
He embraced the villain.
Yeah, kicking Timberlake while he's down. I mean, he was a dirty guy. I don't know that Timmy is dirty per se. He's just more funny. He's the rec league guy who gets under your skin, but he's funny about it.
Here's the one thing about the officials, too. I thought the official who called the 3 good, very emphatically, and some people are like, oh, he had this axe. No, he, too, appreciated, oh, my God, this fantastic game that I just officiated ended, and he was emphatically saying, unquestionably, the ball was out of his hand in time, and that was good. He was putting the cherry on top of the game. I had no problem at all with an emphatic, that basket's good call to end the game. One more thing on the Laettner. I think the one thing that makes that maybe a nose better, that's a win or lose shot. Suggs is a win or overtime, double overtime shot. So there's more at stake with Laettner's play, which was a prayer, right? That game was over. He knew he had the time to make the shimmy and get the shot off. It included the pass. There were more moving parts to that play, which also was all or nothing play. Suggs' play was fantastic with 3.3 left. Obviously knew where he was. Obviously has practiced those kind of scenarios a lot, not taking anything away from it. He misses, though, and what happens? They go to the bench and they come back out and play some more, which we all would have enjoyed as well. Phenomenal. But I'd give it by a nose, maybe. I'd call them the 2 best games.
And I'm trying to think of what would make that game better. The only thing I can come up with is a double overtime. If he misses that shot and then hits a similar shot to end double overtime, that's the only thing that could make it better, was more of that game.
I also think it's heightened.
The fact that it ended in overtime was almost a robbery to us, because at one point I'm thinking, I would like to see more of this if in fact it comes down to that.
I also think it gets heightened a little bit because it's been a very good tournament, but there haven't been a lot of buzzers, right? Has anything happened at the buzzer? We've seen close misses at the buzzer.
Well, the UCLA was involved in
UCLA.
one. Reese for Alabama hit the buzzer beater to send it to overtime.
Right.
Not for the win, but
But we haven't seen a game end on a shot at the buzzer. We saw a miss that was very close. We saw foul shots right at the end. But I think it's almost heightened because you've waited the whole tournament. There hasn't been one. And now in the biggest moment, this unbelievable shot makes it even better.
It really is, though, a perfect ending to that game.
Almost perfect game.
Because UCLA had a a great run through this tournament. First 4 in, they make it to the Final Four. They take Gonzaga and test them to the brink. The best test that they've faced all season. They shoot, 58% from the floor against the Bulldogs in this game. And they lose, not by anything that they did, but by Suggs and Gonzaga stepping up at every crucial moment to come back and win the game, tie the game, make the big shots as they were tested. UCLA did everything right. You mentioned it, Chad. There's no loser in the game, which heightens the impact of how we'll remember it. But the way UCLA went out, they're going to be remembered for the perfect play, even though they lost the game.
Bulldogs answered every time.
Every time.
And you tweeted about it. How about mid-range jumpers?
Well,
they hit, I think I read
Yeah.
something, between the foul line and the arc, were they 8 for 12?
They were. So advanced analytics points to don't shoot mid-range jumpers. You shoot a 3 or you shoot a shot down low. They were, and I was looking at one of these advanced analytics sites that I go to. Based on shot selection, Gonzaga should have won by 24 points.
Is that right?
That's how poor the shot selection was by UCLA. That
Poor,
they kept
quote, unquote,
making.
by
well, no
analytics.
shot by Johnny Juzang is a bad shot.
Right.
At that point, I mean, I say poor just by the basics of basketball.
by Tiger Campbell.
It's poor, but in that game, it was perfect. Jaquez also
Yes.
was great, and they're talking about his NBA potential now and possibly leaving early even. It was just incredible to watch. Gonzaga took the best shot possible from UCLA. I mean, every single punch. And what did they do? It wasn't just Timmy or Suggs. It was Kispert with that inbound play dunk. Some threes by him. Nembhard with a huge
that
three.
cut was
Ayayi
terrific.
was incredible in the game. I mean, everyone that played in that game stepped up at different times. Riley for UCLA was big for a stretch. It was just amazing to see everyone that came into that game played at their absolute best. It's so rare in any sporting event where you have everyone show up and play great. I mean, how rare, we're usually talking about, man, that was a good game, but what if that star player would have shot better? Or what if this player would have done what they normally did throughout the season? This was a game where everyone elevated their play. And the result was an absolute classic.
The other aspect of this is the game was played in the 80s and 90s. 80s in regulation, 90s in overtime. And you had Gonzaga, who averages, 93, 94 points per game. They hit right there on their average once they got to overtime. UCLA was able to keep pace. You know, if this game's played in the 50s and 60s, I don't remember it the same way. And this is a Gonzaga team that missed the first 6 threes of the second half. And they still put up the points that they did.
Well, and I even thought at halftime, Gonzaga trailed the whole first half for the most part. And they scored to take a 1 or 2 point lead at halftime, thinking, well, they just took UCLA's best shot and they're up 2, so they're going to win by 15.
Yeah.
And then the second half, they're taking UCLA's best shot again.
Again.
And they continue. They get up 6 at one point, and I'm thinking, all right, now here we go. I think there's about 10 minutes left. Gonzaga's going to pull away. And UCLA had an answer every single time.
Yeah, and let's not forget what a big dog UCLA was in this. I mean, we collectively gave 14 and a half. I mean, that's an outrageous underdog success story. And I can't help but keep thinking to Villanova, who had no business with Georgetown way back, won a national championship playing a perfect game against Patrick Ewing. And UCLA did virtually the same thing, still lost. But, executed, and I thought Cronin was terrific after the game, saying, I couldn't have asked him to do anything differently. And he really couldn't have. There's no moment of regret to look back on that game, like you're saying.
Well, everybody wants their team to rise to the occasion and to step up in the moment.
They did.
UCLA survives overtime against Michigan State in the first 4. And you want to talk about a team that rose to the occasion. Game in, game out. Again, they played their best basketball all season when it mattered the most. So, again, I don't want to be this sappy, little league type guy of everyone gets a trophy, but in that game, everyone deserves a trophy. You're going to walk off that court disappointed if you're UCLA. You played that well and didn't get the result you wanted. But man, there is nothing to be ashamed about on either side. They are a part of history now. And speaking of history, you mentioned Villanova. I think of Chris Jenkins and that 3 to beat North Carolina in the national championship game, and Jay Wright's reaction, where he just immediately walked over to Roy Williams, and gave him the handshake. Mark Few had a very similar response to it where he put his hands up and celebrated for about a second and then kind of shrugged and looked at Mick Cronin like sorry that it had to go down that way, which I thought was really cool from Mark Few.
And it sets up tonight's matchup, Gonzaga and Baylor. And just for the second time, we have two teams that were ranked in the top 3 for the duration of the entire year meeting for the national championship. It's rare to see the top 2 teams meet for the title in the tournament, let alone that have been there for the entire year. The other 2 that did that was back in the 60s. Cincinnati beat Ohio State the last time we saw this happen. 2 teams that were in the top 3 nationally ranked all year. But to me, I'm thinking no matter what happens tonight, we will remember this tournament for Gonzaga UCLA.
Oh, I mean, you're right, and this highlight, the bank shot is everywhere. How about the LA Times classic headline, banked robbery, as UCLA's hometown paper, terrific. But if Gonzaga doesn't win tonight, that game,
it lessens it.
The game is great, but it lessens the meaning for the Zags. It takes away the undefeated season. They need to. It
doesn't lessen the game.
Well,
the game will be remembered as the greatest game.
But the game will be, it's always going to be remembered, but I do think that
it's a validation tonight.
You're on to something, Paul, in that it's a big part of the Duke-Kentucky lore was that Duke went on to win their second straight title. That was the hunted, almost getting caught. And that was the best team, year-round. Duke the year before, that's where they upset UNLV, which would have been a similar upset in the national semifinal. They had a 45-game winning streak going into that game. Duke beats UNLV. Coach K gets over the hump, wins his first. They're the odds-on favorite all year long to be the national champion and repeat with Leitner and Hurley and Grant Hill and all those guys, and they almost get caught. If Duke goes on to the Final Four after that Elite Eight game and loses, it's not quite. It's big. It's a moment we're still seeing, but not quite as big.
It's viewed as a letdown.
I'm with you that I think Gonzaga now needs to win.
It's
to really
viewed as they left it. They were out of gas after.
Yeah.
Baylor's an afterthought right now. Zags have to beat coronated, I feel like. And I think they will. I also said, and I'm glad it proved to be true, I thought when the Zags got into a tight game, the fact that they didn't play tight all year, they had one single-digit victory was over West Virginia all year. It wasn't going to matter to them that they hadn't played close. This idea, you need to lose one or you need to have been in a close game. I thought that they would be able to rise to the occasion because they're that good, that they would be fine in a close game and able to play to a high level given that situation. It turned out that they weren't.
Check out the screen. FanDuel has carried over the offer from the Final Four for tonight. 40-1 odds tonight. You can take, for new users at FanDuel.com/OK360, you can take Baylor or Gonzaga money line at 40-1 odds. $5 bet nets you $200. You can pick either team, and you're a guaranteed winner if you can find another person, a buddy of yours, your wife, girlfriend, whoever it may be, that wants to sign up as a new user as well. You can split the teams and still make a profit off a $5 bet.
I got a bet tonight if you're not a new user, and this is what I'm riding tonight. Zags over 81.5. I mean, they scored.
Yep.
Been saying that for a while now.
Right? I mean, I should have been playing their
Baylor
over
also
number
does.
throughout this whole thing, right?
What's the over-under in the game?
That's
combined?
a good. I don't know what the combined over/under is, but
you like that,
the
right?
line is 4.5. Gonzaga 4.5, and I just
you like that.
I know it's very.
They're scoring over 81.5.
I like it, and I know that it's very easy to say, boy, Baylor looked great against Houston and just dominated. They're 25 at halftime, and dominate, and Gonzaga got tested. So boy, Baylor might win this game, and I'd come out of that thinking Gonzaga had their test. They're going to win by double digits.
I feel that way too. It's 159.
Double the spread. It's 4.5. I say double the spread.
It's 159.
I mean, I think it's a high-scoring affair. Baylor, you have to keep in mind, while they haven't played their best basketball, it's because they had that shutdown, and then they've been ramping back up. But they've been winning throughout the tournament.
I mean,
regardless.
they were terrific. Houston was
they caught their stride.
Yeah,
they came out ready to go.
They look great. This is the game we all wanted, and now we get it.
That's right. Hey, we continue the discussion about the best game. Chad, you have some audio we're going to play when we come back.
I do indeed. About comparisons in terms of all-time games that we remember.
A lot
big one
to get to today on OutKick 360. Hang with us. Major League Baseball moving the All Star game. The Titans' overlooked draft need, even to this point of the offseason. All of that and more coming up on OutKick 360. As we roll on, we invite you to follow us on Twitter at OutKick 360 and subscribe on YouTube and to the podcast wherever you download your podcast. If you have an Amazon device, you can ask Alexa, search OutKick on YouTube. The show will pop up immediately.
Bang.
That's right. In a moment, we will describe what's going on behind Paul and Chad with Masters Week kicking off and the significance of the shirt behind PK's shoulder. But first, Chad, let's continue the discussion about whether or not what we witnessed was the greatest game. in and of itself, the fact that we're saying this in the same conversation with Kentucky and Duke in the Leitner shot puts it and qualifies it as greatest of blank. But even those that were there courtside for Kentucky and Duke say that they loved what they saw on Saturday.
So Jay Billis was on SportsCenter over the weekend. I love Jay Billis's basketball commentary. And we're going to play you a little bit of what he said. He tells the story very well because the first game that pops up in comparison, Duke, Kentucky 92 in the Leitner shot, where here's what Jay Billis had to say about a certain call that he received after the game.
You know, it's funny, like, I think when you have a game like that and you don't have many of them in your lifetime, you wind up wanting to talk to somebody about it. And I got text messages and calls last night from people in the NBA, you name it, from all walks. But the best call I got was from Bill Raftery, and it was about 2 in the morning. And he had called, and usually when he calls at 2 in the morning, it's for a different reason. But when he called at 2 in the morning, we started talking about that game and the different plays in it and how great it was. And he said that Vern Lundquist had called him. And Vern Lundquist called the Duke-Kentucky game in 92 and said, tell your partner Grant Hill he's got to move one step back because that's the best game ever. You know, that kind of thing. Like people know the real deal when they see it. And that was the real deal. I put it up with the top games in any sport I've ever seen. And all those tweets you just put up from sports luminaries in every sport, I mean, that just doesn't happen for any game. This thing was different. It was unique.
I have so many questions about that phone call. First of all, what's the volume level on a phone call from Bill at 2 a.m.?
Hey, kid, are you still up? Well, I am now.
There you go. Pretty good impression also of Bill Raftery. The real deal, as he described it. But that's from Vern Lundquist, who called that great 92 game also.
I'm not up to snuff on SportsCenter anchors, but who's that child anchor that they have working there?
I have no idea.
Matt Berry, I think is his name.
No, that wasn't Matt Berry.
That wasn't Matt
That's not
Berry.
Matt Berry?
No, that's not Matt Berry. That was someone different.
Then I don't know who the child
I know Matt Berry well. He's also a young-looking guy.
Yeah, he's a young-looking guy. That was a young guy.
Yes, that was like the high school version of SportsCenter.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the fact that this game produces this this quote-unquote debate tells us a couple things. One, it reinforces how great this game was. Two, it tells us how quick we are to search for something to debate about the great game, right? We automatically need to slot it into context and kind of debate whether it's great. We could certainly say it's the best game since '92.
I don't know if we're debating it, though. I think we're appreciating it.
Yeah.
I think we're not arguing over the fact of what we just saw was excellent, and it was poised, it was tough, physical.
It's like Bill has said, right? You know it when you see it.
Yes.
The real deal.
It was perfect. What we saw on Saturday night was perfect for the Final Four matchup. I don't know if there's some, there may be some manufactured debate going on this morning.
Don't turn on First Take
with First Take or with Undisputed, but that's just that's what they do. I think the conversations I've had over the last 3 days have been more about, man, how awesome was it to sit and witness that game start to finish and not have a single complaint about the way things ended and the magnitude and the excellence of execution.
And what's been the biggest unifying sports event since COVID put us at home? Like, I don't remember. I'm sure there have been a few. Or since political divisiveness really has come to rule the day. I think it feels extra special.
Maybe probably the Masters when Tiger won.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
All right, but
I can't even think of another one.
there are
Hutton's
fewer.
right, that's it.
There are fewer and fewer absolutely unifying events for America anymore, and so this is certainly one.
Yeah,
right?
but it's still in the political element.
Yeah, it was in the political era, but it was not in the COVID era, and so I'm just thinking of this now. But I think it was a delight on Saturday night to be on Twitter, to get text from your friends, and for absolutely everybody to be on the same side of this in agreement. That was terrific. And for their impossible, who was the one dissenting voice? Skip Bayless finding something wrong with it, and everybody universally saying that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's not even worth. It's the point's not even worth bringing up because he's
lucky shot.
You know that he's not that dumb.
No.
He's just bringing that up to give. He's trying to be the adversary. If everyone's on one side, I got to be on the other to get people talking about me. So I don't even want to talk about it or him with that.
Yeah, he doesn't
the cool
deserve it.
thing about the whole story that we played right there it's Vern Lundquist, a guy in his 80s who called this legendary game and has been a part of so many legendary moments. Typically, you would think someone in
hold
their
on to his moment.
80s would say, well, hold on a second. I was at Leitner and Duke, and that Duke-Kentucky game, you can't manufacture that rivalry between this budding program and Duke at the time under Coach K and Kentucky and what Pitino was doing and coming back from death, and to have that group of overachievers in that game and the war that it was, you would think Vern Lundquist in his 80s would come back and say, let's not compare it to that right away.
Grip onto his
Instead,
moment.
he's calling Bill Raftery and saying, tell your partner Grant Hill there he needs to move aside. That's the greatest game I've ever seen. That's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Also, I do wonder two things about tonight's game. First, Baylor, the roles were reversed, right? When we did our parlay, we were taking. Many were arguing Baylor and Houston was going to be tighter than 5.5 points, which was the spread, and that you would take Gonzaga over UCLA and lay the points.
14.5.
I took both favorites and lost, like most of America did with Gonzaga and UCLA, but I never saw Baylor blowing out Houston to the effect that they did. Roles reversed on the spread, and I think Baylor's hitting a stride now, and I wonder what is the emotional drain after a game like that on a team. Not that Gonzaga stood up to their best test of the season, because they did. And they are the best team in the country. But the emotional drain after the fact of a massive moment like that, to come back and now have to play Baylor, who's hitting their stride and has one of the best on-ball defenders in Davion Mitchell, one-on-one with Jalen Suggs. I can't wait to watch that game tonight.
I think it's
because of that matchup.
Yeah, I think it's Mark Few having the Herb Brooks conversation, which Chad and I were saying. You got to validate that game by finishing it. And Herb Brooks to the U.S. team after they beat the Russians, Mark Few, not to be overly dramatic, is saying the same thing. If you don't win this game, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. It's right here in
He had a
front
different
of
line.
you. Go finish.
That we can use on the internet,
Right.
but not on radio. He said, you'll take this to your bleeping graves.
Yeah.
Your bleeping graves if you lose this game after one
Finland.
period.
But I don't think he has to say that to this team. They are they're just too calm, cool, and collected.
Right, but you asked about the emotional toll. That's how you make sure that the emotional toll doesn't play out tonight. You said, give me one more. We need one
I'm
more.
defiant on this, and I may come back tomorrow and look like an idiot, and you guys can play this back for me. But they had their scare. Like, there is going to be an emotional drain to a game like that, but I don't see it affecting this Gonzaga team. I think that they are grateful that they were locked in a battle like that they took UCLA's punch time and time again and kept making plays, and they hit, you can call it lucky, but a great shot by Jalen Suggs. I think that they're grateful to be in this spot now, and they are going to cruise tonight. And Baylor's good. Baylor's a great. I think there's two great teams in college basketball, and it's Gonzaga and Baylor, and they're in the same group. But I think Gonzaga, being pushed the way they were in that game, they come out tonight and they win by double digits.
I think UCLA turned out to be a great team.
Yeah.
I mean, what they did in this tournament run, they weren't a great team all season. But
no, they lost their final 4 games going into the tournament. There's a reason they were first.
And they were down. They were down 14 to Michigan State in the first 4. But what they did over the last 3 weeks, I don't think anybody would want to have played them either.
Well, I forgot who tweeted it, but he's like, and it was a USC guy, I believe, who said it's unfortunate that UCLA can now say, come to UCLA and win a national championship.
Yeah. We told you we could do it. Years and years of titles.
And Mick Cronin
here we are.
A ton of credit. I think it's a 10-point game tonight probably too, Chad. I tend to be on board. I'm not as confident, and it sounds like you maybe could even see it being a blowout.
Well, this is no knock on Baylor either, because they are great and they
think they're
look
just running
terrific
into
Saturday.
the wrong team.
They've allowed just 61 points per game in the tournament run.
Yeah, I'm
Baylor.
still going 81.5 over.
And they've been in some tight contests, and then they pull away.
Again, they're terrific. Mitchell's defense, the way they can defend. I know Houston's known for their defense,
and Suggs
but Baylor's
off
got
the
great defense
dribble.
also.
Suggs off the dribble and getting to the rim. He's over 50% off the drive. I mean, just creating a shot and also off the dish. He's fantastic. He's just an excellent guard. He's up there with, Evans and Conley and Rose and those guys when you think of the freshman impact. But beyond that, the defense by Davion Mitchell, there are those, if you follow the NBA draft, that say no one player has helped his draft stock more than Davion Mitchell in this tournament run. So with him, Suggs is already a top 3 pick guaranteed. Yeah. Davion
possibly
Mitchell,
number 1 overall.
Possibly. And Davion Mitchell now is a national name.
Yeah.
Because of his style of play offensively, but also what he does on defense.
I'll give you another national name now, Johnny Juzang, who was talking about him. I remember he lit up Tennessee a year ago at Kentucky when they came to Knoxville, and he was a guy off the bench that no one was expecting anything from and couldn't miss in that game. That was the first time I heard of Johnny Juzang. He goes back home to UCLA and leaves Kentucky. What do you think Kentucky fans are thinking as they sit at home, not even close to getting in the tournament this year?
What is Coach Cal
And they're
thinking?
watching Johnny Juzang just light up America.
What's Cal thinking when he's like, I couldn't find a way to get this guy on the court?
Boy, it's
I don't
not,
think
not
he's
a great
conceding a mistake, because I don't think he's a guy that concedes many mistakes.
His team didn't make the tournament, so.
No. I think it's pretty fair to look at both programs right now and say, well, who made the mistake here?
Which is crazy.
We know who's on the upswing of those 2 programs right now. They're not.
Well,
it's not a school
while we're
that
talking
burns
coaches, Cronin. How many times did you see his dad on the broadcast?
I wasn't.
Very unfortunate that every time I saw I noticed twice, and I thought of you both times, Paul.
Me and Hep.
They went to Hep, and he's picking his nose both times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, it's allergy season, so there's a chance. I've already fought off 1 sneeze today on the show.
Have you?
I don't know if I'll be
Have
able
we
to make
had
it
an
the whole
on-air
time.
sneeze yet?
You're going to make it.
I don't think we've had
Have
an
you ever
on-air
seen me
sneeze
grab
yet.
my face in a weird way? That's usually me forcing back a
Sneeze
sneeze.
suppression?
Unfortunately for old Hep, he couldn't hold back the nose picking, the booger picking on air. So
When it bothers you, it bothers you.
when you've got a
you gotta
bug,
get it
you
out.
got to get that bug out,
get it
and
out.
that's what
It's
Hep
hard
did.
if you got a camera on you the whole time. I think it's impressive that we collectively, today is day 16. Mm-hmm. We have not
Chad's
had an
keeping
on-air
up. Chad's our
sneeze.
daily counter here. 16.
We've not had an on-air sneeze.
I'm putting it on Twitter only
I'm jinxing
because
it.
I want to document how many shows we've done. So you'll see Monday, day 16, Tuesday, day 17.
We don't believe in
We're doing that
jinxes
for
or
ourselves, not for you.
superstition. So I'm not going to say we're jinxing ourselves by talking about not having an on-air sneeze, but I do feel we're due.
Also love Lance and Jacob,
We are.
but I think there is a 0% chance they turn one of our mics off in time for a
Oh,
sneeze.
no, they'll boost
There is
them
no
up.
way, because they're going to be looking I'm going to be doing this or something, and Jacob's going to be looking behind him like,
No,
am I being
this doesn't
attacked?
mean mic
What's
off.
going on? They're not going to.
This doesn't mean mic
What is mic off? Okay, like that. All right.
What does this mean? I don't like what you're doing?
Yeah, no good.
All right, yeah. You guys suck. Yeah, boo.
Right now, my Orioles are 3-0. I just want to mention that
Congratulations.
because they're ahead of the Yankees, and
It's an April tradition for us.
they're at least 2 games up. Chad, let's do that.
Are they scoring runs? Because our teams are not scoring
They
runs.
are. They put
They
up
are.
11 yesterday against. They put up 11 against the Red Sox.
Yeah, that'll be a month for
The
Yankees to
Braves
get there.
not doing so well right now, but they will. That's the
Yeah, look, it's
gonna hit.
it's fine. These people that overreact
Yeah.
to
Your
early
little friend
season
is,
games.
he thought that one at bat killed it.
0-3, swept by the Phillies. Phillies are good.
How much did you get to
watch?
watch?
I like their roster.
I'm curious. How much did you get to watch the local broadcast, the regional broadcast for them?
I watched quite a
Bally's?
Saturday. It was Joe Buck doing the game on FS1. I watched not much on opening day. I watched a lot yesterday. On
How much
it
how
seems
much
like
are
the
they-
exact same broadcast.
How much are they talking about MLB's decision to pull the All Star game in Atlanta on their broadcast?
I did not hear it discussed once on the Braves broadcast.
So there's been an edict sent down,
I'm pretty sure that
which is ridiculous.
that yes, there's been an edict sent down from Major League Baseball on that. Are we going to get into this now?
Yeah.
Or do we want to take a break and get into it?
Well, we can get into it after the break, absolutely. But before the break, though, let's point out what is behind Paul. If someone's wondering, like, why does Paul have his shirt hanging up behind him? This is the Masters shirt.
It's famous.
I'm trying to send the photo, and I will, to the guys of Paul on the course at Augusta National, where he's wearing this shirt. And was it the final time it's been worn?
No.
3 or 4 years ago? Paul got back from Augusta National and was crushed for his
worn it?
attire
I've worn it.
with the button-up shirt, short sleeve, and I think the pattern. They thought, why are you wearing this on a golf course? And I remember
It was fun.
Paul walking around. I didn't even think twice about it at the time. And then I get back and I'm thinking, yeah, everyone there's wearing a polo except for Paul.
I took it up a notch. I dressed it up an extra notch for the Masters.
So this
My
is the
tribute
Masters
to
shirt.
Augusta. And there was a song written about it.
There was.
There's
There
a
was
song written about many things.
Parody song written about it, and we guessed the price of what he paid, which was around $80 for said shirt that now hangs.
I also have a
in
blue
our
plaid
studio.
shirt of the same. I bought 2 shirts.
And it blends in a bit with the wall here at Blackbird Studio, but you can see behind Chad the Masters jacket, which we give for our 360 Masters champion on June the 10th. We normally have our charity golf tournament at Topgolf the Thursday before the Masters, which would have been last Thursday. Because of some scheduling issues and capacity requirements, we've moved it back a few months. So this year it will be Thursday, June 10th.
It's a terrific
Tickets go
event.
on sale tomorrow. More details on that coming up tomorrow and how you can be a part of a big night that will benefit the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of Tennessee if you're in the Middle Tennessee area. Hang with us, more coming from OutKick 360. OutKick 360 rolls on with Chad Withrow and Paul Koharski. I'm Jonathan Hutton. Big thanks to our entire crew for making the show happen today. Like and follow us on social media. You can find the show on podcast as well and live stream on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. If you're watching, you're in the mid-state, if you're in the mid-south and you're planning on making a trip down to Atlanta for the All-Star game this year, that's not happening. MLB pulling the All-Star game out of Atlanta, making that decision on Friday due to the new voter requirements across the state of Georgia. And that led to a ton of reaction on social media, both on Friday and all through the weekend, including today.
I think it's a terrible decision by Major League Baseball. And I think that anyone that really looks into this law and sees it for what it is and isn't just regurgitating headlines from places like the New York Times will understand that it's ridiculous. The state of New York is more restrictive when it comes to voting. Did Georgia get more restrictive than this past election? Yes, but that's because of COVID-19 laws making it a lot easier to vote in this last election. It's way more open than it was in 2016 with this voting law. This whole thing about depriving people of food and water, it's the same as in the state of Tennessee and a lot of other states. 35 states, in fact. You can get food and water just 150 feet from the entrance.
50 yards away, yeah.
50 yards away. They're just making it where you can't have people come out and bribe people with a lot of food and water. In the state of New York, for instance, you can't give anyone, even the license, only the polling employees can give out, and it's got to be less than $1 in value. So they can hand you bottles of water. This is not uncommon, but we've come to a point in this country where everything has to be divvied up. Charles Barkley said it very well, that there are powers that be that are profiting and benefiting on turning people into robots on opposite sides of each other and getting people to hate each other. And when I know why Major League Baseball is doing this. It's not because they have some passionate argument about what's going on in Georgia. It's because they're corporate sponsors. They've got some people there that are coming in and giving them a lot of heat about moving it out of Atlanta because they disagree with it politically. This is not some righteous stance by Major League Baseball. But what it does when you're a sports group like baseball and you get involved in these political things, it alienates people. It alienates your fan base. And there's a lot of people who aren't rushing to social media in fake outrage about what's going on that are pissed off about this. And I do think it will hurt their bottom line. Is it going to kill the sport? No. And I don't think that wokeness or whatever you want to call it, that it's going to ultimately kill sports. Will it hurt sports? Yes. I think that it will. I think the pandemic hurt sports also. That's a part of TV ratings also in decline. But I just think it's an awful decision by Major League Baseball. I don't see any other way around it.
There's no reason to make some of these changes. And if New York is more restrictive, then New York should become less restrictive.
Well, MLB should take things out of New York then. That's the precedent.
That's fine, but that's not what's at issue here. What's at issue
why is
now
it
is
at
Georgia.
issue?
I let you do your thing, so let me talk. The elected Secretary of State, who's head of the Election Commission, elected official, is now not in charge of it. An appointed official is in charge of it. Who would you rather have, an elected official or an appointed official?
Who made this decision? Was it elected officials that got together and, by the way, negotiated this for 4 months? For 4 months, Republicans and Democrats, they had to come up with a plan because Georgia took 15 days to come up with their voting election results. And they had to go into official audit, because there were so many inconsistencies.
Did they come up with the results? Or did they came up with the results?
Look, I think they came up with the right results.
This is sore losers. They came up with the right results. Sore losers, altering rules to make it harder for the people in the areas.
How is it harder?
How is it harder? Well, here are a couple ways that it's harder.
You have to show your ID. That's really hard.
Showing your ID is fine, but it reduces the time frame that you can get an absentee ballot. So why? It worked fine. They got the right results.
How did it work fine?
They got the right results, and more people could get absentee
the right
ballots.
results? There were 15 days it took. An audit had to take place. You have to present an ID to get a beer or to get, for Major League Baseball purposes, to get tickets for will call.
I'm not objecting to the ID thing.
Okay,
so
there
there are more available
days now to vote. There are more available days now to
It
vote.
cuts the time voters have to request an absentee ballot. It limits where you can drop off your ballot. That makes it harder on some people. Here's my argument. Don't make it harder. Make it easier. Period. Don't put an appointed person in charge of it. Put an elected person in charge of it. Here's my thing. In anything, I want an elected person in charge, not an appointed person in charge. You know why? An appointed person, A, getting appointed, you have more chance of being corrupt. B, once you're in, you have more chance of being corrupt. And I, as a voter, have less chance of voting you out. You know why? Because you're not elected. You're appointed.
New York, you
These
have
are bad
9 days of early voting. In Georgia,
I don't care about New York. I'm
I
talking
do.
about a new bill
I do.
that's
But Paul,
changing things.
This
in
is
this
the
Why
problem.
don't you? You should care about New York.
When you fight
New York
selective,
should change as well,
When
but
you
New
fight
York doesn't
selective
have the All-Star
battles like
game.
this,
That's
all
right.
right? Let me give you the problem with Major League Baseball taking a stand on this. When you fight these little selective battles, you open yourself up to questions like this. Let's look into New York. Let's look into the president's home state of Delaware, and we see how much more restrictive it is. Is it racism in New York and Delaware? Are they disenfranchising people? Show me where it's disenfranchising people in Georgia to require an ID for an absentee ballot. And yes,
Again,
there are less ballot box
I don't know how many times I
drop-offs
have to say I'm with you on the
because of COVID-19. They had more opportunities. This was a weird election cycle because of COVID-19 for this. And you say
it worked well,
you
and it
say
increased
these are
voter turnout. So let's stick with it. Let's stick with anything that increases voter turnout.
it worked
I
great.
want as many people to vote as possible.
Yeah, it worked
Is
great.
that bad?
There was an audit. Yeah, Paul, there's not stopping anyone from voting with these laws. Explain to me where this is stopping someone from voting.
It's
I
creating
want everyone to
long
vote on
lines.
this.
It's creating long lines.
You know what happened in Florida in 2000 when they had huge problems?
It's
reform.
creating long
When they
lines.
had problems in Georgia, they're reforming it to make it where they can come to a result that's easier to come to. It's not going to take 15 days and an audit to get to. And yes, there were all these places that were open and everything happening in a COVID-19 year. It's not going to be that way every single time.
Part of the reason they're doing
And they
this
still have
stuff-
more open days to go vote than a
Part of the
state like New
reason-
York.
Part of the reason they're doing this stuff is reaction to all these allegations of fraud, all of which were proved false.
Okay.
All of which were proved false.
So Stacey
Court
Abrams
after
saying that
court
she got
after
jobbed
court.
out of the 2018 election and trumpeted like a damn hero and being invited on Stephen Colbert to go and say that she had it robbed from her and she was 50,000 votes shy? How is that right?
I didn't say
So
it.
she can do it and she's a hero, but Republicans want to say that, maybe there were some irregularities
But those
in
all
one
went to
election
court.
because of COVID, because there wasn't ID required on
They all
absentee
went to
ballots.
court.
They're all wrong?
They all went to court and they were all thrown out. There were no irregularities found in Georgia.
No irregularities found with Stacey Abrams' 2018 election. Yet
This
she
isn't
continues to
about
profit.
Stacey Abrams' thing.
Again, this is what the problem is, though, Paul. When you open yourself up, politics are ridiculous on both sides. And when you start this game of I'm going to take this, I'm going to take my ball and run with it
Yep.
because I'm pissed off at this one side, and only one side is heard, you get these arbitrary battles in different areas for everything
Only
that's thrown
one
out
side
there.
was heard in doing the bill. It was all Republican. The
You
bill's
think-
passed all Republican.
And again, you're saying you don't care about New York's restrictions.
I do care about
But
New York.
you just said you
I think,
didn't.
I think. Well, I don't. Right now, what's at issue is Georgia.
But
I think every state should make it as easy as possible to vote.
Well, no,
That's my stance.
But whenever the sports are getting involved and they're pulling things out of certain states based on restrictions, when more states are more restrictive than the ones that they're complaining about or standing up against, what message does that send?
Well, they're reacting to new legislation. All right. They're reacting to new
which is still
legislation.
less restrictive than old legislation that they never took a stance against.
They should take a stance. I agree against all voter
And they're not.
registration.
They're simply
well,
not.
let's see
So
what
where do they
moving
go?
forward.
Then where are we going to go? They joined 35 states that require an ID for absentee ballots.
I don't know. When you
there
and
are
I were-
15 states left that don't do that.
When you and I were discussing, the one other thing I want to bring up is your big concern for local business in Atlanta that's losing out on this, right? Who's the big local? Didn't you agree?
Well,
local business from
I
it's
think
estimated around $100 million will be lost.
there's other estimates say $190 million.
Okay, and the number
Out
one
of a city with more black and brown owned businesses than any city,
okay,
major city in America.
But would you agree the number one local business area that will be affected by this is the Battery?
I don't know. I mean, yes, it'll be affected heavily.
The Battery is the shopping and food area. I haven't been to the ballpark yet, but it's right there, right at Truist Ballpark.
And I think
now.
the employees of all these places are affected.
The employees are affected. It's 2 days, right? Not great, but 2 days. I went through the places in the Battery yesterday. They're headquartered in Columbus, Ohio, Bonita Springs, Florida, Hingham, Massachusetts, Austin, Texas, Denver, Portland, much more than they're based in Georgia.
So then
that argument doesn't hold.
Why is Major
that
League Baseball
much
punishing
water.
those states then, and those companies?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Because the ones that are really hit are the ones that are not getting tips and not having extra days to work.
For 2 days.
And who are those people?
For 2 days, Atlanta people are getting hurt by that, but somebody else is going to benefit by it.
Major
Whoever
League Baseball
ends it.
played a game in Cuba.
So I'm for.
And now they're going to be high and mighty on this. They played a game in Cuba. And you're going to say, well, that's not the issue at hand right now.
Well,
and I'm
it
going to
isn't the
say,
issue at
Paul,
hand.
do you have a problem with presidents lying?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you have a problem with Joe Biden going on ESPN and claiming this is Jim Crow on steroids? Do you know how, talk to anyone in the South that lived through the Jim Crow era. And you know how insulting that is to people that lived through that era? When he claims this law about requiring an ID is Jim Crow on steroids.
You keep saying
when he
about
also says
requiring an ID.
when
That's
Joe
what everyone's
Biden
saying.
You
when
that
Joe
the
Biden
ID
says,
issue is not the
do
primary.
you
That
think
is
it's
the
insulting to
political
Jim Crow
talking
laws to
point, is
say
the
It's
Crow
not
idea.
my
steroids?
talking point.
Paul.
I'm telling you other issues with it.
When
He's
he says working class people can't get to the polls by 5 p.m. and they're closing the polls at 5 p.m. and polls close at 7 p.m. Is that a problem? When the
I
president's saying
haven't
that?
seen that specifically.
That's a huge problem.
That's a problem. If
That's
he's
a
off
big-
by 2 hours, that's
The
off by 2
problem
hours.
is,
but if
though-
you're making that like it's a presidential lie,
The problem is, and I see this in my
that-
comments.
that's
the problem
off.
is people hear that and agreed. It's a problem when the previous president lied about it and people just hear it and agree with it. But when people are mentioning what Biden said about it and quoting him directly, this is misinformation. This is a false narrative that's put out there. And now Major League Baseball is bringing more light to it. I hope in the end that this leads to more wide discussion about it and people can actually see the truth for what it is. That's my hope.
I hope that everybody makes it easier for everybody to vote. I think it should be. I think we should vote online. I think you should have a week to go online and vote. That cybersecurity in America should be good enough that it should be that easy to vote. That I should be able to go
And you
online
know that's
and
not
vote
true.
in 5 minutes. I think we should be able to do it. I think we should
Facebook can't
aspire
even keep their
to do it.
members private,
I
and they
said-
are all about
I
security.
said I think we should aspire to do it. I think we should be able.
That's
to
great.
do it.
That's not
it's-
possible.
I want elections where everyone is under the same rules, where there's a lot of availability to get to the polls, even on the weekends, which that's been expanded in Georgia now too. I want elections where everyone has to have an ID to vote. I want elections that if you want an absentee ballot, there's a no excuse clause in it. Delaware, New York, you have to give an excuse. I like that Georgia opened it up and said, you know what, I don't have to give you my reason for having an absentee ballot, but I do have to give you my ID or my ID number in order to vote. So it's one vote per citizen. I want all these things to happen. I've yet to been told anything that is restricting anyone from voting. Show me where this rule disenfranchises anyone. Disenfranchisement, by the way, Major League Baseball taking a stance on for a league that played in Cuba and defended that decision. Talk about disenfranchisement.
Did you see the pictures of the people in line to vote anywhere in America?
The people that 100 feet from the
No,
thing
just
could get
people
water.
in line at polls to vote. Wisconsin, Atlanta, Georgia, anywhere. Did you see the picture, the pictures of people in line to vote?
Yes.
Were they mostly white? They were not.
Okay.
They make it harder, generally speaking. The places where it's hard to vote are not places where you and I vote. Would you agree with that?
And they gave those availability. There's more availability now in those places.
It's harder
Physical
to vote
locations,
absentee in those places now.
Physical locations, okay.
In those places
But
now,
those
again,
the people you're talking about weren't voting absentee because you said they were
Well, they're
in long
discouraging
lines.
them from voting absentee.
They're trying to lessen the lines by
want
giving
it-
you more opportunities to vote.
they're not discouraging them to vote absentee. They still can.
They've cut down the period in which
If they
you can
got
vote
tired of
absentee.
standing in line, the next election they can
Paul,
vote
they're
absentee if they so
cutting
choose.
down the period of time because they don't want any sense of impropriety. They don't want it to be 15
I don't care
days
if there's
after the
a
election.
sense of impropriety
They don't
or
want a
no
bunch of
sense
ballots to come in
impropriety.
late.
Just have no impropriety. which there wasn't.
So there should not be an All-Star game played in New York moving forward until they change their voting
but there was in
restrictions
2018
and rules.
Like Stacey Abrams is
just for the
is
record,
a legend?
anyone that has restrictions that are more than what Georgia just
I
implemented.
think the MLB. I'm fine with
MLB should pull
MLB
all the
saying
money out of there.
I want
Right?
broader voting,
Not
less
broader, not
voting,
or-
less voting restrictions from everybody, and we're going to campaign for that across the board.
And we're going to cancel all
in
events that
the
are planned
places
there
that we
and
are.
moving forward until you change your policies.
I mean, I don't expect they're going to do that, but I think it would be within reason based on what they're doing here.
So let's stop baseball. Let's end it. Let's stop baseball
And I
until
think
everyone
calling
can
it-
vote whoever they
and,
want.
And I think this thing where everything immediately, if somebody disagrees with somebody, that you call it cancel culture, is very snowflakey, quite frankly. If you disagree with something and you have a consequence that you want to put on it, now everyone's, oh my God, it's cancel culture, cancel culture. And quite frankly, it makes you sound like the people that you object to, who you call snowflakes. You're allowed, Major League Baseball, whether you think it's right or wrong,
I
they're
don't call
allowed
anyone
to assign
snowflakes
a
for the record.
consequence. You don't, but some people do. You're allowed to
Some
assign
people
a
can.
consequence.
I'm fine with that too if they want
You're
to.
allowed to assign a consequence to something you don't like without it being under the broad heading of cancel culture or political correctness. By the way, I'm against both when they're overdone. But you can assign
This
a
is
consequence
overdone.
to something. I don't think this is
overdone.
I don't think this is the
And it
federal
is-
issue
I'm
it's
sorry,
being
but it
made
is-
out to be. I think this is another example of everybody
It's a federal
wanting
issue.
something
Major League Baseball's
big to
making it
cry
into that.
about. Oh my God, they didn't like something. They made a business decision. Look at how politics is ruining everything.
Paul, they're the ones crying.
They are the
They
ones.
didn't have to do a thing. They could have said, you know what, we're going to support the black-owned businesses and black workers in Atlanta, and we're also for less voting restrictions. We're for all of these things. But I'm not going to penalize the people who had nothing to do with this.
You're making it
because
like
we
they're
have a
doing-
problem with the Republican-led state
You're
legislator
making it like
in
these,
Atlanta.
the
It
bill
would have been
writers
so
are
much
doing something
braver
heroic.
to not cave to the mob. That would have been the brave move by Major League Baseball and said, we stand by the Braves. They had nothing to do with
It
this.
would have
We
been
stand
so
by the
much
city of
braver
Atlanta.
for the Georgia
And
legislator.
if people
not
want to
to
show
cave
up
to
and
the mob.
protest, great. That is their right to show up and protest.
What if the Georgia legislature didn't cave to the
Paul,
mob?
what you're striving for is for online voting, when right now this device is listening to everything we say.
Hutton, I said it's the goal, the ultimate goal. I didn't say you could do it now. You're just
I don't-
conveniently leaving out elements of what I said, like Chad
And you're
keeps doing
conveniently
when I
leaving
said
out
the
that there are
ID
more
is not a
states.
factor.
You're
that I have.
conveniently leaving out that this is it's not. It's more restrictive than some states, less restrictive than others that have been in place.
I'd like to see all
And
those states
Major League
fixed. I've
Baseball
said that
is
over and
setting
over.
the standard now that moving forward, anything more restrictive than what Georgia just implemented, they should pull out of completely. That's the standard they've set. And if they don't, then this is cancel culture.
What events do they have scheduled in those states that you want taken out right now?
I don't know. Moving
Well,
forward,
give me a
Paul,
list.
moving forward until they change their current policies. That's the standard.
Okay, that's the standard.
It's selective
Is it
righteousness.
not?
It's selective righteousness with it because, look, I don't think either election was fixed. I think Georgia went to Democrats fairly in this election.
And they're sore
I
losers
think in
about it.
2018, I think Stacey Abrams is being a sore loser. And I think one side is propped up by media and Stephen Colbert and Seth Meyers and everyone else as some conquering hero for saying that she was jobbed out of an election. And then when the other side says, well, maybe there was some impropriety here, it's, oh, that's stupid
But
conspiracy
there was
theory.
no
You're being
finding of
ridiculous.
any impropriety.
Where's
It
the
went to
finding of
court.
2018, Paul?
There is none.
Okay, then why are we not talking about her the same way? Why is she being booked on night
ancient
shows?
history. I don't know. I don't book Colbert.
The problem
but I'm not
is,
saying there were
Paul,
any improprieties
when you
with
have
Stacey
one
Abrams.
person banned from Twitter for doing the same thing and another person is trumpeted as a hero, there is an imbalance out there. I want balance.
Stacey Abrams lost an election and is not an official. Trump was president of the United States and asked the Secretary of State to find him 11,000 votes. That is not apples and apples, Chad.
And he's also
No, they
been
didn't.
banned as not an official. He is a private citizen right now, and he's not on Twitter.
But they're making these changes based on what he wanted.
Paul, they are making these changes in part because it took them 15 damn days to come up with a decision,
There's no
and their
ticking
own
clock on
election commission had to
results.
audit it.
There's no ticking clock. Did we get the right results? We did.
You good with Florida in
We
2000?
should
and all the
aspire to be
problems?
able to figure out an election within 2 weeks.
Are you great with the results
If we're
there?
gonna say that.
They changed their election process in 2000 also.
I
think
want the
everything
right
was fine
result.
and dandy there?
I want the right result, like with NFL officials.
Was it the right result in 2000?
When it went to the Supreme Court? I don't know if it was the right result or
There
not.
we go. That's it.
What?
It's two sides. Well, you don't want to talk about Stacey Abrams complaining about it and condemn her, but you want to condemn
I
the
was
other.
satisfied with the conclusion in 2000.
Okay.
It's ancient history to Paul. It's
I was
2018 is
satisfied with
ancient
the
history.
conclusion in 2000. Let's go to a break. I got to be somewhere.
Paul has to be somewhere other than this show.
Paul
should
will
be
now-
the priority.
Paul will now leave the show.
You'll live with it.
For now. You're absolutely right, for
I
now.
mean, we could discuss it on air if you want.
Chad, on display behind you, the birth of Catfish Jake and the instrument of crime. Jacob Waddell, huge fan of the show and a great friend of ours, threw a catfish on the ice in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, the Nashville Predators at the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he was charged with disrupting the peace and charged with using and possessing an instrument of crime, which just happened to be a catfish that he threw on the ice. And here is the court summons from the Honorable Jeffrey A. Manning. We display it proudly.
The Honorable Jeffrey A. Manning, the Honorable Jacob Waddell, the reason that we went to Augusta National for the first time, the reason that we had a sticker of our previous show on the catfish that hit the ice. Now the one thing we need to do, Hutton, is just get this man an OutKick 360 sticker so he can place it on a fish of some sort and throw it on the ice of a big NHL event.
Our next big goal is to have one of the catfish that's on display at Bridgestone Arena named after Jake.
Something new from the shelf. This is an invitation to Jerry Jones's Hall of Fame party just outside Canton, Ohio. I got it because I'm on the selection committee. It was +1. But there are 3 of us. Who perturbed me last at the time? Hutton got the golden ticket. Literally golden. There's Jerry on the back in gold. They had golden wrapped hamburgers at the end of this event where we watched Justin Timberlake perform Not From Far Away. We drank with Derek Dooley, and we toasted with Amy Adams Strunk. Later on, we met Chad in Cleveland.
The 360 Masters is back. Hey, it's Hutton. Hope you'll join us on June 10th for a one-of-a-kind event with OutKick 360, other great writers and producers from OutKick, including David Reed, who will throw his back out again for the 2nd annual event. Thursday, June 10th, you can sign up on Eventbrite or just follow us on Twitter at OutKick 360. 100% of the proceeds will go to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of Tennessee. Hope you'll join us for a great event. Get your team today and join us at Topgolf Nashville for the 360 Masters. what is still an underrated position of need for the Tennessee Titans. Welcome to the Tennessee Power Hour and OutKick 360. PK will be back in just a moment as he's on the phone right now with Mike Vrabel.
We didn't kick him off the show, we promise. I know that's
No,
going to be a
not yet.
popular opinion. We haven't done that yet. There's
Lance
a long
Lee.
pause and then yet.
Props to Lance Lee and Jacob Swanson for making the show happen. Emma Notstein. David Reed is the chairman of the board as well. Maybe you saw during the break the midday, or not the midday, it used to be midday Masters, OutKick 360 Masters. And Chad, it is back for the second annual event, which will take place Thursday, June the 10th. And that's why we have the Masters shirt and we have the green jacket, which will be awarded to our 360 Masters champion. Tickets on sale tomorrow for your teams and the Topgolf Bay. You pay for a bay, you get 6 players, and it all benefits charity, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society of Tennessee. If you're in the area, if you want to have a good night on Thursday, June 10th, we hope you'll certainly do that. Tennessee Power Hour, if you're listening in Knoxville, we appreciate that for Fox Sports Knoxville. Chad, let's start with the Titans and an underrated position of need in the draft, which shouldn't be. It's pass rush. Because if you think of Bud Dupree, who's coming off an ACL injury, Harold Landry, who needs Bud Dupree, both sides need to step up in that area. And on the interior with Simmons and Autry, they don't have much depth beyond those guys. And with Dupree coming off the injury, I don't think he's Bud Dupree of what we saw in September, October, November of last year, albeit he is a massive upgrade over what they have. And without the opposite end pressure on the quarterback, Landry's just going to be Landry in theory. They've got to go address that. And they need not just some 4th or 5th round guy, some developmental guy. They will need not just a depth player, but an impact type player that's going to rotate in and out more than a Derek Roberson, for instance.
Isn't it funny that of all things we're talking about being underrated need for the Titans, we're talking about pass rush right now because so much talk about corner. I think that when we're looking at it, and the Bud Dupree signing.
But that's not wrong. I mean,
right.
Corner is a huge need based on what they've done. But in
Absolutely.
the Dupree signing, you're right, hides the fact that they still lack a lot of depth.
That's what masks the whole situation is that you bring in Dupree and you think, oh, well, they've solved it. They have not, and that they need more than that. You know, a guy that I see popping up in that mock draft first round occasionally is Christian Barmore from Alabama. Does Christian Barmore help with pass rush? I don't think that much. But there's different ways to rush the passer, right? The Titans have a need for edge guys who can win one-on-one and get to the quarterback. Can Bud Dupree be that guy? He can. Will he? Coming off injury? Don't know. But I'm with you, Hutton. That is a need that has to be addressed, I think, in the first 2 rounds.
No doubt. And it's the chicken or the egg. Do you go pass rush? Do you go defensive back? Which side raises the bar for the other? The answer is both. But the pass rush issue it's been a huge issue for the Titans in recent years, and it's one that I would value much higher in the draft this year. But there's not going to be the elite pass rusher at 22. I'm not saying you have to go get him in the first round, but at 53 in round number 2 or in round 3, as they get the compensatory pick, they need to go high in this draft to address that spot and not just overlook it and think the developmental players are already on the roster or in undrafted. It's not going to happen this year.
Well, especially coming off a year and an off season where you went to the free agent market to address pass rush with Vic Beasley and Jadeveon Clowney, and neither worked out for you. So now it's even more imperative you go get someone in the draft, not in free agency, to address that position.
Vols in spring practice, the focus is on the quarterbacks, and Hendon Hooker seems to be the guy. Chad, you mentioned this out of the gate before spring practice even started. If we were putting the odds out for which guy was in contention to lead the charge there, it would be Hooker. But every pass that at least the media is able to watch is under high scrutiny right now, and it doesn't seem like anything's going to be determined anytime soon there.
Well, and I think that Harrison Bailey could be a very good quarterback, and I'm interested to see his progression under a new offense also. But I also feel like I know what Harrison Bailey is, having watched him a year ago. Can he improve? Absolutely. He was a true freshman, thrown into a difficult spot. He can get a lot better. But watching Hendon Hooker at Virginia Tech, while he wasn't great, he offers a different layer to what Tennessee could do on offense at quarterback. Enough so, Hutton, that I'm intrigued to see what he could bring to a Josh Heupel offense. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's as accurate as Harrison Bailey. I think he's got an equally as good of an arm as Harrison Bailey, but he's got much better legs, and he can run, and Harrison Bailey really can't. So you combine all the different factors. I think in today's college football, you got to be able to run at least a little bit. I think that's just a prereq the way the game is going. You don't need to be an option quarterback running all the time, but you got to be able to run a little bit. For that reason, I really want to see Hendon Hooker in this offense, and I'm sort of rooting for him to win the job. It's not going to be Caden Salter. He's not even at practice yet with the legal issue. I saw Caden Salter was complaining on Twitter all day yesterday that Tennessee didn't offer him a happy birthday on social media.
What?
Which was very odd. He was a lot of tweets about that and saying my own school won't even wish me a happy birthday, but other schools are wishing him a happy birthday, to which Tennessee fans were responding and saying, that's an NCAA violation, bro, if other schools are wishing you a happy birthday. So you need to tell us which ones are. Very, very strange. He's off to a very bad start for me. I mean, I don't want to bury the guy having not taken a snap yet, but you get into an incident, even if the charges were dropped that early, and you're going online to bitch about not getting a happy birthday announcement while you're not allowed to live in your dorm on campus, that's 2 strikes. That's 2 strikes for Caden Salter. One more, and he's going to be suiting up for Tennessee Tech.
Is it bad that I automatically think, man, this kid is entitled? He feels he's entitled if he's asking for a happy birthday shout out.
Absolutely believe that. Like if you're that upset about not getting a birthday shout out that you take to social media, is that what you want your starting quarterback to possess? Is that the qualities that you want in the end? Look, I somewhat kid, but let's be honest. This is a position where you need more. You got to have more from your quarterback. You expect more from the quarterback. Caden Salter's not off to a great start in that department. I really want to see what Hendon Hooker has to offer. And I think Bailey's got a chance also. I'm not buying the Brian Maurer talk of him having a chance to be the starting quarterback. Speaking of needing more from a quarterback, I'm going to need more from him in a lot of areas also that I just haven't seen yet. So it's going to be interesting to see what goes on the remainder of spring practice, which right now we're, less than 3 weeks away from the orange and white game.
Help me with this, with Maurer. Why the hesitation to say that the other quarterbacks, and I'm not saying you, but the last regime refused to take Maurer out of the running for the battle to start games when we knew he was not at the caliber of even Garantano? Why the hesitation to say this is a 2-quarterback race right now, and instead of
I mean, you need bodies. Like
you need bodies, but there's why the need to recruit him constantly?
It's not. Look, it's less about recruiting him and more about this is the era of football we live in now. Unless you're Alabama and you can afford guys just leaving immediately, and even Alabama don't want to afford that because now with the new rules coming into play, you could leave Alabama and go to LSU and start on day one if you're upset with the coaches. So there's going to be a lot more of re-recruitment of players, and constant recruitment. And I think you look at Tennessee's quarterback situation. Now, if Caden Salter were there and playing great in practice, you might be less inclined to say, Maurer's got a chance to start if you know Salter's going to be a part of your program, which, quite frankly, I don't know that Tennessee knows that right now with the start he's off to.
Yeah, but if you got down to it, like I'm saying, if it's a 4-quarterback room, Salter's my 3rd, and I'm wishing him a happy birthday if I have to go to him.
I know, but how confident are you that it's going to be a 4-quarterback room with Salter? That's why I give the Tennessee coaches a pass, because they haven't even seen the guy practice yet because he got arrested before camp started. Now, the charges have been dropped. Again, I want to be fair to the kid, but now he's going on a Easter Sunday rant about not getting a happy birthday message on Easter Sunday from his school. So I just don't. If you're Tennessee, you got to be sitting there thinking, we need to give the impression that all of these quarterbacks have a chance, even if they don't. And we know they don't, because we need all these guys to stick around through fall camp. And we need them to be a part of this team come August.
I wish we had some sort of transparency is the wrong word. I want more honesty in this quarterback battle.
I wish Tennessee was in a position as a program to say GTFO.
I know.
To guys who suck. But they simply don't. They got guys abusing cats on the roster that haven't been kicked off yet, and that's a weird story that we can get into. But essentially, Aaron Beasley, who's a middle linebacker, has been accused of abusing his girlfriend's roommate's cat and giving it brain damage by the Knoxville Police Department, which is now a big story in Knoxville. But Tennessee's just not in a place where they're going to just immediately say, get out of here, because they want to field a football team this fall that may be fun to watch at some point.
And I know the tempo is going to be different, and that's what they're stressing. I got so tired, and I know Tennessee fans feel the same way, of the previous offensive coaches, and Pruitt for that matter. After practices this time of year and in the fall, the quarterback battle, those guys are really doing well, and they could rattle off 1 through 4, all the things that everyone's doing. They're just great practice for Garantano, and just wonderful practice player. I do an eye roll when I hear that now, because Heupel's doing the same thing out of the gate, where he's like, we're working on tempo and mechanics, but these guys are doing great, and I just don't buy it. And when I see Maurer's name listed as a candidate, I'm thinking, get out of here with that. Like, why should we believe that? But the Davis kid, the redshirt sophomore on the offensive line, who's getting first-team reps.
Dane Davis, yeah.
Like, there's some substance there. Like,
and he's also 6'7", 325.
But my point is, you see the redshirt sophomore getting reps. I don't hear, and I don't see Maurer doing the same type thing years back, and I'm not buying it now that he should be included in all this. If you get to Maurer on your season, we saw what happens when you get to Maurer in your season. It just happened.
Yeah, he did not.
New coach is here.
He came in the Arkansas game and looked dazed on the field.
Looked really bad.
Look, it is a sad state of affairs of where Tennessee is right now. I do think there is more talent on the roster than maybe a lot of people think. The Vegas over-under right now for Tennessee, 7.5 wins. Ole Miss's is 7 coming into this season.
Show bet?
Which is crazy. I'm going under if I'm betting the show bet. I think 6-6 would be a really good season for Tennessee. And I think they've got a good chance at getting there. But 7.5 is the over-under. I was shocked to see that. But Tennessee's just not in a place, and I don't think they're going to be for a while, where they can just loosey-goosey go to the media and say this guy sucks. And he's not cutting his weight without that guy just saying, you know what, I don't need this. I'm going somewhere else where I can play immediately, or I'm going somewhere else that's had more success.
Tennessee Power Hour, the Nashville Predators, they are in Detroit tomorrow. David Reed waving his gold towel right now. They are in Detroit tomorrow and then Thursday. And looking ahead to the schedule, by the way, Detroit's in dead last. They're terrible. The Preds right now in the final playoff spot up by 2 points. These are games they need to win outright.
Got to beat the bad teams.
And then you've got Tampa, Detroit, Tampa after that as part of the schedule. 2 points ahead of Chicago right now, with the Stars, Columbus, and the Red Wings bringing up the rear. Tolvanen has been excellent as of late. Goaltending continues to be great. Preds in the playoff push, and 2 games that they better win this week if you look ahead and start counting points and the teams they're up against with like the likes of Chicago and Dallas.
What is success at this point for the Preds this season? Just playoffs?
Yeah.
Playoffs, you get swept.
Doesn't matter.
No problem. Just get there.
For where they were and how, not just where they were in those standings, but how they were playing. I mean, they were dead in the water. And to catch fire the way they have, to do it through some of their critical players that we would have circled as guys that need to have a close to consistent type career year combined, for those guys being injured and the way they've been playing, this is huge for the management and the decision makers of the organization. That everyone's calling for Poyle's retirement. and John Hines was deemed worse than Peter Laviolette. He was being compared to Ken Wisenhunt. To go from that to now postseason, that's a huge step forward.
Well, I think you're right. That would be success for this season. I guess my follow-up question would be, should that be success for where the Preds are right now as a franchise?
No.
Because we talked about that window opening when they made that initial run to the Stanley Cup final and losing to Pittsburgh in that series. That window should still be open, but it doesn't feel open right now in terms of championship potential.
But we said the same thing a few years back, you know, as the 8th seed and the run that they went on. PK is about to rejoin the show and get mic'd up again. So as we do that, we'll be back in just a few minutes. We'll get the latest from Mike Vrabel's press availability. First time that he's talked since the end of the year, Paul, since the end of year assessment. So we'll get the very latest from PK on Vrabel next on OutKick 360. OutKick 360 rolls on in the Tennessee Power Hour. We've heard from Mike Vrabel, and the first availability since the end of the season, since coaching hires were made, as they begin draft preparations. We've heard from Robinson about a month or so ago. Now we hear from the head coach.
Vrabel did one around the time of Robinson's thing with fans. So he did that in lieu of with media, and media were invited to listen to that.
Some would
Of
argue
course
that some of the media are fans.
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what this media group has become. So why not?
and it was very soft.
You can have Charlie from Bellevue in, or you can have someone from some fan website go on there, or fan radio stations. What the hell? Let's have them all be fans.
And it was very. I didn't go into that night, but it was very soft pedaled as you would expect. And there were a few.
Paul
tweets
may be
out.
the last non-fan in media. This is great.
I pride myself on being in that.
How did it go?
Small group.
How did it go?
We had some of the attitude he usually has.
enemies list is growing.
I pressed him on the.
People to kill.
Are you confident? Are you confident in how you're assessing guys loving ball now, considering that Isaiah Wilson and Vic Beasley very clearly didn't love ball, and you pride yourselves on? It seems like it should be an easy identifier. He made fun of the length of the question and then kind of poo-pooed.
And you know what? I'm sure a lot of people
followed
in
up
that
hard.
building are pissed off that you asked that. It is a fair question based on the mantra that they walk around and they post on their walls, and how embarrassing it was to watch some of these players come through that building last year.
I'll have to reassess the answer, but it was basically like, they love ball. So the proof is in the pudding on that. He was
Kudos
pressed.
for asking that question.
Yes, they love ball.
He was pressed.
Thank you.
By the way, Bud Dupree loves ball.
Yes.
You can hear, to me, it's not hard to figure out if a guy is passionate about the sport of football.
Well, it was difficult with Isaiah Wilson's.
And Kevin
Hearty
Dodd,
laugh.
and the hearty laugh. No, I agree. That's why it's a fair question. But when you hear, and you certainly talked with him, when you hear Bud Dupree discuss the sport,
You hear fire.
this guy loves it, and he has a track record of doing just that.
Yeah. I think it's a little easier, too, with a guy whose film matches up to loving ball than it is with some of the college guys. Though, you have questions about free agents that aren't top-of-the-line guys like Bud Dupree. He was clearly, I was a little late onto there after our debate, our high-intensity segment, but he was clearly asked about Shane Bowen and about the coordinators and was already tired of defending himself on that. But then he took a follow-up question about how seriously he considered and talked to people outside the franchise. Because the only coaching addition was an assistant defensive line coach from Vanderbilt. And I was critical of him, and I think a lot of us were, about not adding a significant voice to the coaching staff from the outside. He said, very seriously considered people from outside the organization. You want to hear other perspectives, other ideas. He had said something about loyalty in the initial answer that I missed. He wanted to clarify that. He said he asks his people to be loyal to the program, to the organization, to players. He has problems, he said, with coaches. There are a lot of guys in the league, and I get this. We're always looking for the next move, and we've known coaches like this, who come in and they're already on the phone with other friends around the league, about a move to the next spot that could help them make the move to the next spot, who ultimately want to be a coordinator and get to head coach. And so I can understand Mike Vrabel being reluctant about those guys, not in the Mike Mularkey way where he said, I've got guys with no aspirations. This is terrific. These guys all want to be here and never go on to anything else. But Vrabel's got a sensibility where he wants guys who were dedicated first and foremost to doing a kick-ass job for the Tennessee Titans. But he said he did interview quite a few people.
And he brought in some outside coaches last year.
Pep Hamilton
Haslett
was one of those guys. I think he talked to Pep Hamilton not about the coordinator job. I think he talked to Pep Hamilton about the tight end job, quite frankly. And I think Pep Hamilton, I can't remember where he landed, but he got something better than a tight end job. So this is refreshing to hear that he talked to them. I still think, one of these outside voices would have been good as an inside voice, that he didn't have them. Still hates the defensive coordinator question about Shane Bowen and rebuffed.
You can hate these questions. These are fair questions.
Oh,
That's a fair question.
Look, I get it.
I don't think he was questioning that they're
If I'm Mike
unfair. He's
Vrabel,
just
I
tired
hate
of
that
it.
question too because my defense sucked. when Dean Pease wasn't the defensive coordinator. And it grates at you to hear it over and over, but you got to come up with a better answer at some point than just brushing it off and being annoyed.
You also have a little of that.
Come up with a standard answer if that's what you need to do.
You can't be annoyed getting that question on April 5th when you haven't answered that question yet. So, if you want to get that question over with and say, I've addressed Shane Bowen as defensive coordinator, well, address Shane Bowen as defensive coordinator when you hire him as defensive coordinator, and then you can say, I've put that to bed. If you haven't talked about it till April 5th, then you've got to deal with it.
If we're making a list of things that have happened since we last heard from him, that's on the list.
That's the number one thing in terms of a negative.
This is all fine if the Titans are winning division titles and they're playing the way they have under Mike Vrabel. And I think Mike Vrabel's done a hell of a job as the head coach. So this attitude on questions is all going to play out just fine with your fan base. You got an edge, attitude, rah-rah, love coach doing this and sticking up for what he believes and all that. It is great. Mike Munchak was a guy that everybody liked throughout, right? Respected, liked, and he probably got the benefit of the doubt at times because of that. My only point with this, with Mike Vrabel, is this is going to sound a lot different to Titans fans when they're 4-12. Not saying that day's coming up soon, but if you continue, which he will, because this is who he is, with this attitude to these questions, all the defense that he's getting right now is going to go away quickly when they're not performing up to their standards.
I will say this about the coaching staff. And look, I'm on the record, and I've said it with you guys. I wrote it very harshly when they announced, particularly the defensive staff I took issue with. But not as much as the players. And you guys, on our old show, I said consistently, number one issue with the defense for me last year was the personnel. They did not have good enough personnel. And I think too many people went straight to Bowen, straight past the position coaches, who I don't think did a great job. Personal development in a player comes first from the coach who's hands-on with that guy every day, which is the position coach. So I don't think there was enough talk about Anthony Midget with the corners or Jim Haslett with Rashawn Evans not, moving backwards and all of those things. I do think, and I'm curious if you guys agree, we know Vrabel's stubborn and set in his ways and all of those things. There's a long period of time there, as they're getting into draft and free agency, where they're also doing a self-assessment, right? And some of the comments Vrabel made at the end of the season indicated, that, hey, we're going to reevaluate things from a personnel standpoint and from a coaching standpoint. I think he's a smart guy who's too stubborn and set in his ways on some things. I'll be surprised if they have not really delved into what they did, what they didn't do, what they need to do development-wise, what they need to do scheme-wise, and if they don't come out and do better with the coaches that they have. He's got faith in this group, clearly. He's going to expect better results from that staff and from himself. Now, I know as a defensive coordinator in Houston, which was a very small sample size, it was not good. And last year when his thumbprints were on the defense a lot more, though Shane Bowen was ultimately making the calls and had those duties, it was not good. He's a prideful guy, right? And I think surely he cast some of the blame on the personnel and on John Robinson privately. But I will be surprised if, and I'm not saying it's going to work, but if he has not changed some things to a noticeable degree when we next see that defense on the field. Besides personnel.
You can point and discuss, Paul, the assistant coach's staff, right? The coaching staff. That's fine for 1 year. But as the head coach who has final say over your staff, if you bring those guys back after a poor performance, it is now on you.
Agree. And the personnel has been improved. It needs to continue to be improved.
Yeah.
But your front four and nickel we've talked about. You've got Autry with Simmons. You've got Dupree with Landry. That's substantially better than anything they put on the field last year. Secondary still needs to be developed, but Jenkins, I think, is an encouraging guy. I think we agree Hooker over Vaccaro. Now you're younger and you have some more verve. Vaccaro was starting to fade. Hooker's coming on. There's potential there for the defense. Personnel-wise, the defense has gotten better. And if you draft successfully, it will get better. Then maybe you get another free agent or two somewhere in the mix.
Right.
The personnel is better, is going to be better. Is the coaching going to be better? Is the play calling on defense going to be better? If the third down defense isn't substantially better, then all of it is up for serious.
Coaches can
review.
improve just like players.
Yes.
So, Shane Bowen could improve. I mean, that's
Second year for some of these guys.
that's within the realm of
Hazlitt.
possibility. But you brought up the assistant
Booker.
coaches and the position coaches, Paul, and I would agree that the biggest issue a year ago was personnel. But the fact that you didn't have a defensive coordinator that could elevate was also a big issue. Losing Dean Pease, big issue.
Big drop off. Second year for a lot of these guys. Booker with safeties, Midget with corners, Hazlitt with inside linebackers, Bowen as coordinator. Now he's been replaced with outside linebackers who have their own coach. Time for those guys to elevate the same way you're expecting Christian Fulton in his second year to elevate, the same way you're expecting Jeffrey Simmons in his third year to begin to penetrate with better guys around him on the front. All of that stuff needs to happen in concert. And again, Hutton, we're not asking for the number one defense. What do we want? You got to go from 29 to 15.
Average.
15, 16. You get to 15, 16, the offense holds up its end of the bargain. You should be a football team that's in the mix in the AFC.
Rise
Now,
by
do we
10
expect
spots.
that? I don't know. I don't know if it's fair to expect that or not. There could be a huge drop-off for this team, given the schedule, given new coordinator on the offensive side of the ball, given unknowns at wide receiver
game.
after given extra game, given drop-off at receiver after A.J. Brown, unproven guys, given the lack of Johnny Smith. A lot has changed. He emphasized, a lot has changed for us. A lot has changed for a lot of people.
That's a fair point.
That's the way the league works, and it's working more that way this year because of the salary cap confines produced by the COVID year.
And they still have. We were praising roster continuity at this time last year, right? The Titans still lead that category
On offense, for sure.
in the division. I mean, look at the quarterbacks across the division.
Well,
right
Houston's massive turnover. Jacksonville's new coach,
Wentz is coming
both
in.
both Houston and Jacksonville, new coaches. So you've got massive turnover. A new quarterback in Jacksonville. Huge quarterback controversy in Houston. Turnover cornerback in Indianapolis, where they're very satisfied with their roster and just want to add some pieces. They had a lot of money to spend. They haven't spent it. Now, Ballard's a good roster builder. But the Titans, not as much based on what they've done, but based on the things that other teams haven't done, still sit pretty in the division, I think.
A quick break, and then we're going to continue the Titans discussion with some other bullet points that Vrabel had to say in his press availability earlier today on OutKick 360. Tennessee Power Hour. OutKick 360 and the Tennessee Power Hour recapping Vrabel's press availability. Paul, the battle on the offensive line. Kendall Lamb has been signed. Ty Sambrailo is back as a swing tackle, albeit they're saying he's in competition for Kendall Lamb's position.
Yeah, so he was asked if Vrabel was asked if Kendall Lamb is just plugged in. He says, no, we've got Ty is back. We're happy to have Ty. Both those guys can play tackle on either side. Ty can kick inside, so that's on the record that Ty has got guard capabilities.
And Lamb has kicked inside. It was years ago.
Sure. So he didn't mention that. So they see Lamb as a tackle. But it's interesting because Vrabel has said this before, though I can't think of specific incidents, where he set up a battle. But there has not been, in Vrabel's 3 years, a legitimate training camp battle on this team. What was the biggest? It was going to be Wilson and Kelly. Didn't come to fruition. What else? It was going to be Fulton, it was going to be sorting out that nickel job last year. Didn't come to fruition because of injuries. But I don't know that they've set up a legitimate training camp battle in Vrabel's time here. So that was the question I was going to ask. I had the last question. He said, got to go. But I was going to ask, do you envision legitimate training camp battles? Because you haven't had any. There's been no competition for starting spots.
Well,
we don't even know who's on the roster yet.
What would they sell as a battle right now?
Lamb Sambrailo would be the primary one. You still don't know who the rest of the receivers or the corners are to set it up.
Yeah, who's going to battle Nick Westbrook-Akina for the starting role?
Who's going to battle Kevin Johnson for the slot corner is a big one.
That should be no competition
for me.
either.
Right, the newcomer should win. But I think you could set that up as a legitimate battle because they're selling Kevin Johnson as the slot corner. Defensive line is set, though not the nose spot. So Tier Tart should have some competition there. Who else plays nose on this team? Nobody we are going to, background guys maybe, but they need somebody out of this draft or undrafted pool.
We mentioned prior to the break the roster continuity. There's not a lot of true roster battles that you point to right now, let alone 2 years ago, where we thought it was going to be on the offensive line. I don't know if you agree. I think it's Kendall Lamb at right tackle. I don't think it's Ty Sambrailo.
Well, I mean, after we finished talking about how, you don't necessarily sign people in order, they cut Dennis Kelly the next day. We went, well, they were signing Kendall Lamb in order. You weren't signing that guy at the very beginning out of depth because Dennis Kelly was quickly gone.
And we're saying competition for starting roles. Let's clarify that.
Yeah. You always have competition for the smaller roles and things like that. Nickel and third receiver, we consider starting roles. We're going 12 deep on both sides of the ball. Right now, outside of the positions that aren't filled, the extra corner, the extra wide receiver, you have to sort those things out. He was asked about Reynolds and Westbrook. Our favorite guy, Reynolds, excited to have him, opportunity to compete, to play, versatile, can play inside, outside. Westbrook, he's not giving away anything big here, but he said he's a very good blocker. He needs to continue as a special teamer, needs to continue to develop his route runner and how he functions in our offense. That hardly sounded like I think of him as a number 2 receiver for what that's worth.
Agreed. We will get into the 17th game impact for the Titans and the off season that is, or the virtual off season that we expect, and a bigger discussion coming up tomorrow. But they are starting virtually next week, the 17th. Is that right?
17th or the 19th.
Okay.
Yeah, and he doesn't know a lot. Starting virtually, they'll meet like they did before. The thing is, when they have meetings again on site, they'll be in the bubble. Because the Titans' building expansion is ongoing. And a lot of that stuff's torn up inside and still under process. So even if they could return to normal, old normal, they can't. Because a lot of that building is gutted right now and being rebuilt. So they'll be in the bubble. They have 2 weight rooms, their weight room and a secondary weight room that's in part of the bubble. So you can only have so many guys at a time in the weight room together. They have 2 separate weight rooms where they can do that numbers-wise. So it would have been an unconventional off season for them anyway in terms of how they held meetings and how they worked out based on the rebuilding of their facility and the addition to their facility. So it's actually not a bad thing for them if things turn out to still be dictated by COVID protocols. And the other thing is, we should just mention, the NFL is not dictating, nor could it dictate guys getting vaccinated. But I think this is the case in other sports too. I think baseball's saying it. If guys are vaccinated, a certain percentage of guys, the protocols are eased. So, no matter how guys feel about vaccines, if a certain percentage of the team, I think 75%, gets vaccinated, a lot of this stuff that's been a huge pain in the butt last year for them all gets relaxed. So I don't know if there'd be some peer pressure or whatever.
You would think they would be motivated enough to relax those restrictions to want to do it.
I would think. The social distancing is relaxed, the mask wearing is relaxed.
Are they getting workout bonuses for staying at home?
It's a good question.
If the bonus money speaks volumes for some guys, so that's why they'll do it. They'll get paid to show up for those workouts if they're relaxed.
I don't think they have too many guys with workout bonuses. They do those per game roster bonuses, but I think they've generally steer clear of the workout bonuses in new contracts anyway, if I'm not mistaken.
We'll get into the NFL draft for the Titans, and again, moving forward, the off-season structure. That'll be coming up tomorrow. We're going to recap the national championship game tomorrow, Baylor and Gonzaga. The line right now, 4.5. And the 40-1 offer from FanDuel.com/OK360. You sign up as a new user, you can take Gonzaga or Baylor 40-1 to win outright. And that's a $5 bet. It'll pay you $200. You can sign up now. FanDuel.com/OK360.
Separate of that offer, I like Zags over 81.5. I think Chad's with me. You like it?
Yes. Oh,
that's our show bet.
Even though Baylor is allowing a little over 60 points per game right now. In the tournament.
The Zags score.
We also love the OutKick VIP chats. I had a great one leading up to the Final Four tip-off on Saturday. We are back. We're in literally minutes. We're going to be live for all OutKick VIPs on Zoom. If you're looking for that link, you just go to the OutKick VIP section at outkick.com. Click on the message board. Excuse me, the message board. Within there is a thread where it says Zoom chats. You click that and you've got the link right there. It should also be in your email as well, but we're looking forward to sticking around for an extra 30 minutes or so.
Should be a good one.
Chatting with VIPs. Yeah, you can sign up, outkick.com/VIP.
We were talking about it. One thing that you have the opportunity to do here, and this is something I've done at my site at this level, it's kind of an advisory panel thing. So we might ask you some questions about what can we maybe tinker with, and your insight will be heard and perhaps utilized. So that's a big opportunity for you. Come talk with us.
We'll also explain some of the bigger events we have coming up. And for VIPs, how you can get the link a little early if you're interested in joining us, for instance, at Topgolf on June the 10th.
Terrific event.
Shout out to Lance Lee for making the show happen, but then David Reed, the chairman of the board, who sat in Lance's chair.
Didn't miss a beat.
As Lance had to run
How'd
to
it
the
feel
meeting.
over there, Dave?
Warm.
It's very
Lance
warm.
and Dave, I picture it's
Very
both
warm
guys.
here at Blackbird Studio. Big shout out to Jakob Swanson, the Bath Salt Bandit. Maybe the closest Reed has ever come to bath salts is literally right now, sitting next to
I
Jacob
picture
Swanson.
Dave as a soaker, but not a bath.
Jacob's dad watches
He's a bubble
the show.
bath guy.
Jacob Swanson's dad watches the show and wants more PGA talk. I'm sure that he's also
It's coming.
very impressed with his son when we referred to him as the Bath
What's that
Salt
bubble
Bandit. I'm sure
bath thing you
he's so
had
proud.
as a kid? What's the bubble bath thing you had as a kid?
Mr.
I'm sure-
Bubbles?
Yeah, Mr. Bubbles.
that
Dave,
Mr.
is that your
Bubbles?
thing, Mr. Bubbles?
Yeah,
It's his thing tonight.
He'll soak and watch the game.
Reed loves an ice soak.
it's not true.
I don't want to picture it. It's disturbing.
Big thanks to Emma Notestein as well.
Emma.
She's behind everything that we do on social media and all the great videos that you see after the show. Thanks to Emma and our great crew with OutKick. Speaking of that, subscribe on our podcast channel. Subscribe on YouTube. Like and share on Facebook, on Twitter. Thank you for all the social shares there. And again, available on podcast wherever you download your podcast. Just search out OutKick 360. Thanks for joining us today. Back at it tomorrow to recap Gonzaga and Baylor. Enjoy the national title game.
Don't block the box. Do lock the locks.